Good morning, sir. How are you?
Hey Rob, good morning. Doing well.
I'm down here in Myrtle Beach. I'm wondering what these hotels go for, since you're a commercial guy. Do you ever look into selling hotel properties?
Yeah, we had a motel for sale down in Mantaloking. It's not so easy to sell though, Rob. It all depends on the occupancy and the type of clientele.
Is it a small one because it's a motel?
Yeah, it was like 24 units.
Yeah, that's in a strange spot. While we wait for the rest of the crew to get here, they're tearing the Tara Sheraton down.
It hasn't been torn down yet, but they are going to tear it down.
That's pretty surprising, huh? Didn't seem like that was that old.
It's going to be warehousing. Well, it was an event space and nobody was having events there, but it's going to be warehousing. It's going to be affordable housing. They already have some big leases signed. I think Sony is going to remain there as a large tenant.
Gotcha. Wonderful. So I wanted to dedicate today to you know, staffing. What do you guys have for staffing? What uh is missing? Maybe there's some creative ideas we can have. I think probably the first hire on a team should probably be like a some sort of administrative role. And sometimes that kind of goes into transaction management. If I could maybe, I guess, Patrick, you have a pretty mature, long-standing team. Could you share with us what your staffing is, and if there is a role that you could add, what would that be?
Definitely, I can tell you the first person that Chopper hired when he got to, I think, probably more than holding about 20 listings at any given time was a listing administrative person. I would be the person communicating with all the sellers, helping him get the listing documents signed, helping him input the listings into the MLS. So listing admin first is what we had done.
And like where does the list and that doesn't help with buy sides transaction management? It was strictly a listing coordinator.
Yes, because of the amount of listings that we carried, we did figure out that we needed to dedicate one person to that role. And then a little bit later down the line is when we had hired our buyer's admin. That was our second support staff hire.
And what is the buyer? Can you maybe just tell me, like broad stroke, what does the listing coordinator do?
Yeah, so listing coordinator is responsible for one, doing all the paperwork with the seller, setting up the dot loop, getting their contact information, sending the documents out for signatures, double checking the documents to make sure they're all signed appropriately. Then they're communicating with the seller on the next steps, whether it be holding an open house, sending them information on what they need to do for the open house. Then they're also putting in the listing into the multiple listing service. They're activating it on Zillow, wherever else it's going to be blasted. They're also helping us prepare the marketing materials, like doing the open house flyers, setting up the boxes for our open houses with the MLS sheets, floor plans, brochures, etc. And then as the deal progresses, they're also involved in the transaction management. So that means
Licensed or unlicensed?
unlicensed.
Okay, so who goes out and meets the photographer? Who does all the I guess the legwork where you need to
That
have a license?
that would be Chopper.
So he doesn't have any team member dedicated to that?
No.
Okay, so I know some of the teams that I've dealt with over the years have maybe taken a team member and made them like the interaction, the point of contact with the client. So one model I had was either a 10 to 15% fee that the team member would get. Started out at 15. I think when the market got to be a little hotter, it went down to 10. And that person came out to the listing appointment, was introduced as the listing partner. And after the initial listing is signed, they took care of everything. Okay. The original thought process was 15% was fair compensation for like an independent contractor, not a salary person, to just manage the listing through. But what they found out was that um, having them take control of the open houses and whatnot, that there was competition for them and that they could pay 10% because they would get buyer leads from the open houses. And the conversation would go something like this. Hey, Patrick, Lynn's my listing partner, not coordinator, partner. And, from here, she's going to be handling the routine activities and you only hear from me if there's a problem. So hopefully, you won't have to have a lot of discussion with me and Lynn will be taking it from here. Right. And I know that that sounds like a complete dump, but there are some teams that really manage that well. And I think the perspective was, I only get involved if there's a problem. So hopefully, I'm not too involved with this. I'm confident you won't be hearing much from me throughout the process because I don't anticipate any problems. So that might be a pivot and just a different idea that you can put in your arsenal. Because for me, that management of the listing, running over there to meet the photographer, if I'm Patrick and Chopper, I'd rather take 30% more listings,
Can
right?
I ask a question about that? Do you ever get pushback from the seller that you were the one they contacted, but you're not the one showing up?
So I know early on that was a huge, huge fear. And the success point seemed to be this is my listing or my, and I hate to use the term listing because I don't think customers feel like they're listings, but this is my partner that's going to handle the transaction from here. Okay. And giving that esteem to that person allowed them to hand that off. And this is a retired person who was probably doing 120 closed units a year at the point before he hung up his cleats, and probably 80% listings. And the profile of the people that were the listing partners were experienced agents in almost every case. They were a little bit more on the mature side, very analytical and detail oriented. I remember one, Rich Murgatroyd, he was probably for 15 or 20 years the listing partner, and very like how real estate team members tend to be like highs and lows, emotional roller coasters. Rich was like steady Eddie. Okay, he was the guy um that you could trust handing off your transaction to. He wouldn't make more out of a problem than there was, and probably was making 60 to $85,000 a year all in. Probably working 45, 50 hours a week. No pressure. He knew that there was going to be a certain number of closings, and that was his role. Um,
Rob,
so anyway,
can you repeat what you said to me now that Chopper's on our call too?
sure. So when we're talking about staffing, Chopper, and we talked about like the first hiring being like an admin, and Patrick kind of carried the football and said that you had a listing. Did you call it a listing coordinator, Patrick? Okay, and I'd suggested that, to get a little bit more leverage, I've seen team leaders um take one of their team members or what used to be called buyer's agents and convert them to a listing partner, bring them out on the listing appointment, hand off the ball at that listing appointment and say, hey, Chopper, from here on, you know, Lynn is going to be your primary point of contact. She's going to coordinate the photographer, and I'm only going to get involved if there are problems. And I'm probably not saying as eloquently as I should, but that was the way that it was handed off, is that there was a expectation that I'm only involved if there's a problem. And they tried to equal the playing field when they made that introduction so that the photography, all the open houses. I don't know, Patrick, do you ever have trouble getting somebody to cover an open house?
Rarely, very rarely.
Because I've had team leaders with 10 or 12 members on their team. They're doing 2 open houses in a weekend. They have trouble getting a second person to call. Somebody's at a wedding, somebody's kids. Like the excuses are like, right? So he took that monkey, put it on that listing coordinator's back, and paid the listing coordinator or listing partner, but it's really a coordinator. At the end of his career, 10% of the commission. At the beginning of the career, it was 15%. And they would get all the buyer leads. They would coordinate all the showings, and they would do some very limited business on, their own business, but they would work the buyer leads. And every open house, the team leader never had to worry about coverage. It was that person that was reliable. They were there 15 minutes early. When they left, all the lights were shut off. Never got a complaint from the homeowner that, the buyer's agent showed up late. They were inappropriate. You know what I mean? Like when you experiment with, some unproven commodities, you get some crazy stuff. I remember when Niren in Morristown was, I think it was Niren. No, maybe it was a different person, but one of Niren's friends went to an open house, on the motorcycle, loud as all hell, walked up to the door with the helmet on, and the kids called 911. They thought they were getting invaded, right? So, you have to choose that person wisely. And, Rich Murgatroyd was never that guy. So,
Rob, in that scenario, who does the showings?
I mean, if you have to be present for showings,
Yeah,
so in the market where I was, it was a lockbox. They didn't have a
Okay.
lot of listing agent present at showings. Are you having that for most or only your higher end?
I would say 90% of ours, we have to have listing agent accompany.
And let's see, Ron, is that a Florida thing, or Hector? Because Chopper and Glenn, you never. Good, Ron.
Yeah, as far as showing the properties, is that what you're saying?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, usually Ryan does all the showings, and then I rarely go to the showings but we have to accommodate on the higher ends.
Yeah.
On the some of the smaller properties, we either put a lockbox on or we just contact the owner, and sometimes the owner will meet us at the house. But Ryan usually attends.
So
Yeah, we only lockbox if it's vacant and lower end.
and Hector, how about you? Are you seeing broker must attend, and what's the price point where you cross that line? I don't know, maybe Hector's not able to chime in. Michael, how about you? Gopi?
Yeah, a l- half and half. I would say the high-end listings, broker must attend.
And Lynn, what price points high end? 1.2 million, 1.5 million, 2
For
million?
us, pretty much anybody from 800 up wants us to be there.
So 800 up is on average like a $20,000 to $25,000 commission, right?
Yeah.
So you're probably looking at, $2,500 to $4,000 for your listing partner. And I would expect them to be there unless, you had a white glove client where maybe you couldn't hand it off.
Right.
So,
Yeah, pretty much anybody, I would say anything that we've gotten that's maybe 1.5 and up, they want the person they signed with to be there.
right. And I'm gonna say that some might, but if you say that everybody that's 1.5 and a million and above, they basically want the listing agent to be there, the person they sign with.
Yeah,
Half of that's in your head.
okay.
The challenge is which half is
So when they say it, what would be, I like that you have scripts for things like this. So if the seller themselves, because we've had it, right? Well, you're the one I called and I co-list. I always bring somebody on the team with me so that they can be part of it and get the experience
right.
and the commission. And there have been times where I've gotten a call after where the seller has said, Joe was super nice, but you're the one we called, you're the one we hired. Will you be at every showing? And when I say I will generally be at showings, but that's my co-listing partner, and he or she may be there for them as well, just as experienced, just as knowledgeable about the house. There's a handful that still say, we expect you to be there.
Right. But I mean, let me just reframe it in terms of mindset, right?
Yeah.
You know, and the only thing that I could really think of that comes to mind, which is probably not great, but the doctor that, did the C-section for the twins, was not the doctor that she went to because, he was away. So there was a different doctor that came in.
Right.
So am I going to sit there and say, no, that's not our doctor? Like there's a group, right?
Yeah.
And they're equally as competent. So that has to be the mindset that we have. And I believe, and maybe Lynn, maybe it's 10% or maybe it's 25% that are going to be, you know, um, unwavering and saying, I want you to be there, and you have to make that judgment call. But I would say an overwhelming majority, based upon the vibe that you put out and the competence of the person that's there, will allow you to hand that football off.
Right.
And you can't put it on a flunky though, right?
Right.
You can't give it to Niran who pulls up in a motorcycle to show the house, right? That will create a problem all day long.
Right.
Um, anyway, um, Glenn, your listings are all lockbox, right? For the most part? And you're on mute. Still can't. Okay, no worries. And Patrick, yours are lockbox?
I would say probably 75% are lockbox, yeah.
And if they're not lockbox, Chopper, who goes to those showings?
Well, I think Patrick's referring more to the commercial stuff. Everything we do resi is always lock boxes. So Pat's talking about commercials. So it'd be either Patrick or Tommy for the commercial.
And Bobby G, you're in a very different market. Middlesex County is kind of like its own beast. Um, do you go with any co-op showings?
I was listening to the conversation, and granted, my listings are in a different price point, but I have something in Woodbridge Townships. We had 20 showings over the weekend. There was no way that I could have possibly attended that many showings. So to answer your question is, it's very rare that I attend any showings. It's either the owner's home or there's a lockbox. That's, I would say, 99% of my listings.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
Now,
And Rob, can you hear me?
yeah,
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I've only had one that actually required the attendance, but we front end that. So during the listing presentation, we build the case as to why that's silly and that it actually prohibits open access and things like that. And then on the buy side, it's in our listing, I mean, it's in our buyers, what we call it buyers blueprint, but in our blueprint, it defines why that person other than me is sitting at the table and why they're smarter than I am. And basically, when they leave the table, we have it scripted where I start heavily in the conversation and then they take over, so that I don't have to go out.
right. So you establish credibility in that initial process.
Yeah.
And I know we only have like 11 minutes left. What other roles do any of you have, or do any of you wish you had? Like Glenn, you have a runner, right?
Yeah, we do now. Yep.
And how do you compensate that person?
It's by the type of event. And if it's really far, we give a little extra. So like if it's a super long drive to put a lockbox on, then we compensate them accordingly. But it's just per event.
Are they team members that are doing it, or you have a dedicated person?
Somebody that we just send basically we have a Google form, we fill out what we need, it goes to them and they do it within 24 hours. Just a friend of mine that does it.
Okay. And obviously, if you marry right, you could have a team CEO like Liz, right?
Yeah. Keep things together.
And any other, Glenn, what other like positions do you have? And then what's next on your list as you leverage and grow?
You know, and 2 weeks ago, I was all about I need someone to do recruitment for me. And I actually now take that back. I don't think any third party can recruit as well as I can, or maybe at this point. And I mean, I was outsourcing because that's my background, and I'm just finding that they just aren't me. And the volume that I can bring in opposed to them is unbelievable.
And how about like training? You do 80% of the training for your team or
One
more?
time though. So I'm not too bent over training because everything gets video recorded and thrown into our LMS system so everything's reusable again and again and again.
Right.
I don't mind
So
doing the one time, right? But if I had to do it multiple times, boy, wouldn't work.
Yeah, that's where it gets to be really frustrating. Anybody else have any positions that you want to have?
Yeah, I got one, Rob. I promoted Barbara Nicholson to our team manager on the team, and I give her a percentage based on I signed her to one team member of my 7, so we split on that one team member the profit that we make. But since she's a team manager now, she does all the communication. It actually helps me to be out in the field much more. So I think delegating tasks to team members is very important. My stress level went way lower since I did that.
Gotcha. And does anybody have outsourced people that do any of their marketing or create any collateral material for them?
I do. Yeah.
Is that overseas, Glenn?
Yeah, so Kriza does a lot of our marketing and follow-up pieces offshore. And then she's in the Philippines. And then I have 2 people I use off of Fiverr on a regular basis to do any kind of, we don't really do print ads, but they're PDFs that we distribute. And they create those for us.
And
TV.
and Glenn, how do you use ChatGPT to analyze offers?
Oh, yeah. It's so I've created GPTs that do offers, home inspection reports. So for the offers, you set it up one time and you tell it the line numbers on the contract that are of particular interest, and then you say create in a Google Sheet that will have the comparison for those line items, and then you can train it. Once you have that information, you can train it to give you the results and rank them by the strength of the offer. And I just talk to it to do that. So you talk to the chat and it will refine and refine and refine. And then once you do that, it's saved and you use it for offer after offer.
And
What's
that
the
reminds me of,
criteria you give it? Like cash is king, and then you go down the list based on percentages, no, less contingencies, etc.
Cash, offer price, waivers, literally like when you're chatting with ChatGPT, when I say chat, I mean literally talking to my computer. You're refining it back and forth until it gets to the place where you think it is. So honestly, if you asked me exactly what I said, I had a conversation with ChatGPT and then came up with the GPT after it. But it was an iterative conversation that got me to the GPT that I trust.
So you got me on that. I love my Chat GPT, but I only talk to it through the phone. So you're saying I could set something up to talk through the computer?
Yeah,
The
so
laptop?
I'm a Mac
Patrick's
user.
nodding his head. Somebody got to teach me something today.
I'm a Mac user, so if you're a PC user, I can't help you. But the Mac
Oh.
user, you hit the command button twice and you can talk to your computer.
Oh, I
So-
guess mine doesn't.
But so that's on the offer side, Rob. On the home inspection side, my ChatGPT takes the talk about attorney review. Attorney review is you get your attorney review letter and you have your original contract. Mine goes through and compares the two and knows to weigh the attorney review letter stronger than the actual offer letter, and it creates a summary with all the due dates that I have export right into my Sisu, so I have my dashboards right. But it does all of that abstracting for you that would take me a while. My staff would do it for 30 minutes and they'd always screw it up. And now ChatGPT does it with like perfect accuracy.
so Glenn does this after he helps Elon get the astronauts back from the moon.
The irony is I really think, Rob, like if anyone wants leverage, right? True leverage, you have to say to yourself, why am I doing this? And then take it to ChatGPT and then figure it out. And it's not I swear, I just talk to my computer. I don't do anything special. So everyone on the call can do it. It's just you have to want to get that stuff off your plate. And little things like that drive me crazy, like abstracting attorney review letters and stuff. It makes me mad. So I just said, I'm not going to do it anymore.
Rob, you there?
Yep.
I use Chat GPT to when I get a renter walk in over here in Newark, I put all their information in and then I tell it, how can I get this person to qualify for a home? And then it gives me everything with all the ratios, their income, everything that I need. And then I say, okay, find me homes in Union County and Essex County in this price range for this person. So it'll pop up like 11 homes. Like I had a girl walk in the other day to get a $1,300 rental. I got her qualified now for $190,000 condo. And there's 11 between Essex County and Union County. You know, and I did that probably what in 5 to 10 minutes, you know, talking to to the computer.
Now, does it leverage the MLS or does it use just the public data?
I believe it uses just the public data.
It does. Yeah.
But it's a win-win. I mean, in 15 minutes, I had a renter coming in for a $1,300 rental, and that when I ran NTN, you know, there was like a warning on there, but at the same time, I'm able to get her qualified to buy a $190,000 condo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if Paul, if you've ever hit, like when I have a new tenant on any of my rentals, I put their name in and then do a deep search. Man, it's everything other than what they ate for breakfast. It's crazy how detailed it is.
Yeah.
What do you use, Glenn, on that?
ChatGPT has an option that's it's like a halo above your message for your chat, and it says, "Do you want to do a deep search?" And when you click that, do it on yourselves. It's wild. Like it is wild.
I don't know if I want to see that.
Yeah, I was afraid. I'm definitely not running for president. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But you know, Paul's right. And in June, when AI reaches agency, you're going to be able to give it your logon credentials, and it will search the MLS for you to bring that stuff in. So it's close. Like this stuff is here, and it's just leverage time, right?
Love it.
No, that's it's a great tip. And the last 2 minutes, any other positions that, I mean, runner, we didn't talk too much about a transaction coordinator, listing manager, anything else that any of you utilize, marketing overseas, we talked about that, Glenn, but anything else that you have on your wish list?
I don't utilize my admin staff well enough. I don't have the roles defined well enough. I think I'd be interested to see what everyone has for that. It's like, I think that I missed the beat, right? Like you think they're doing all the things you want and they're not necessarily doing all the things you want.
Yeah, sometimes I've encountered that, Glenn, where they're using a playbook from 18 months ago, and you're like, why the hell are you still spending 25 minutes a day doing that?
Yeah.
We got rid of that. We stopped doing that a year ago.
Yep.
That's good to have an awareness of that. Anybody else have anybody on the higher wish list?
I think Chopper would probably agree that when we hired our client care coordinator, that's helped him a lot with some of the referral stuff.
And that's a onshore remote position, right? Or no?
Onshore, here in the States.
Right, but they don't come to the office, right? They work from their home.
Correct.
Okay.
She pops in once in a while, but
All right, Glenn, maybe one day we'll have to have you, if you're open to sharing your secrets, just share with us a thing or two you do on your ChatGPT. So I think we could see what's possible.
Yeah, Rob, if I was going to say, if you want to give me the tail end of 15 minutes next week, I've got
Okay.
one thing that I've been using that I think it'll blow their mind from a marketing perspective. That's a piece of cake to use, like really good.
Wonderful. Well, if you could maybe just text me how you want me to present that in the morning text for the meeting,
Okay.
that would be really helpful. And while Dona's out, our leadership team is going to be joining the same link if they have anything for me. So you guys and ladies can sign off and have a great week. See you Friday and Monday.
Have
All
a
right, thank
great
you.
week, everybody. Thank
Bye
you.
bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.